I wasn't even allowed to sit on the patio. I just wasn't welcome at the facility, period. And it didn't matter that I said, I am blind. I cannot see. This is illegal. It didn't matter what I said. They yelled at me and would not let me on the property. Hello and welcome to another video on my channel. This is a typical Molly Chit Chat Rambles video, so buckle up. I hope you're ready. This is, as you can see from the title, about guide dog or service dog discrimination. It is a topic I get requested to speak about a lot, and I touch on relatively often, but in very offhanded ways. And to be honest, there's a lot of channels I see on YouTube who dedicate themselves to discussing guide dog, service dog discrimination, to sharing stories, to sharing experiences, to educating. And I admire those people so much. And I don't avoid talking about fake service dogs and misuse of ESAs and my personal experiences with discrimination because I don't care about it or I don't believe it's so incredibly important. I don't do it because for me personally, it's really hard for me to talk about. It is a really painful and emotional subject for me. It isn't for everybody, right? I'm not saying for everybody experiencing this form of discrimination is traumatizing. For me, it is. I've been a guide dog user for 14 years now, which is crazy. 14 years of my life I've been roaming this world with a dog in tow. They've been life-changing for me in so many ways. And to be honest, year 1, year 3, year 5, the discrimination didn't get to me. But by year 14, it gets to me. And I think it's also important to note that previous to the pandemic, I lived a very unusual lifestyle in that I was constantly traveling and going to new spaces. Before that, I certainly, when I was living a more standard average lifestyle, didn't face as severe discrimination or as frequent discrimination as I do now. I think that when you live maybe a more average life of going to the same workplace every day, taking the same train every day, going to the same grocery store each week, and only occasionally going to new places, you definitely wouldn't face as much discrimination simply because you're going to spaces that get to know you. And for me, I never, over the last kind of 8 years of my life, had that specific lifestyle. I was always going to new places, which means constantly running into new people and new spaces that did not know me or expect me. And also, I believe that discrimination in general has increased against service dog users due to how many people are misusing the system, abusing the system, and taking advantage of it. I'm not going to be talking about that dark side of life as a service dog user today, fake service dogs and misuse of ESAs. Today I'm simply focusing on trying to share from my perspective how the discrimination I face feels. Because I think without sharing how it feels, I can't expect people to understand the trauma. A lot of the traumas that I've talked about on my channel, a lot of deeply challenging things that I've been through that I've shared, like my mental illness, like my bullying, like my vision loss, these are traumas that have happened and I've had time to heal or recover from. This is a trauma that is ongoing. I would say in general, Mom, you can tell me if you agree or not, I would say in general, I get discriminated against with my guide dog at least once a week. Mm-hmm. At least once a week. That is minimum. And that is in a pandemic when I'm not really leaving my house very much. So you can imagine when I was living a normal life, at times it's daily. And that means I live in almost constant fear when I leave the house and try to enter an Uber, try to get on a train, try to go to a restaurant, to a mall, to a hotel, anywhere. I am in fear of what fight I'm gonna have to have when I get there. And despite the fact that I'm a confident advocate, that I'm very aware of the laws and my rights, you best believe that every single time I have to advocate and fight for myself, my heart is racing out of my chest. It is not a comfortable experience for me. It still is incredibly anxiety provoking for me as somebody who does live with generalized anxiety. It's very difficult. But I believe that it is so important for me to talk about this, and I've been feeling more and more compelled to talk about this. And a lot of the really emotional topics that I share, I have them on my list for years. But because they're emotional, it's really easy for me to be like, I'll do that next week or next month or in 6 months and put it off. And I put it off until I can no longer put it off because something inside me tells me you need to do this. And last night I was in the shower washing my hair and I just knew I needed to talk about this. And I ran out of the shower wet in my towel and I sat down on my computer and I typed up the things that I want to talk about. And I woke up at 4 a.m. with things racing through my head of things that I wanted to say and that I believed were important. So I knew that even though I had a totally different video planned to film today, today was the day that I needed to do this. And I ask that whoever you are watching this, whether you know somebody who has a service dog, whether you have one or not, that you keep an open mind and you listen to this with as much empathy as you have in your heart to give. Because I believe that our community is vastly misunderstood and our voices and our stories aren't heard. And when they are, unfortunately, they so often aren't taken seriously or as seriously as other forms of discrimination are. And I believe that discrimination is discrimination, no matter for what reason, whether it's ability, race, religion, gender identity, sexuality, or any other number of ways or reasons society finds to discriminate against people. Discrimination is discrimination, and we can't belittle one form of discrimination because it doesn't seem as significant. This is so crazy, you guys. I just ended filming this video and I was about to film a TikTok, go follow me on TikTok, about the new Helen Keller Barbie. I bought this myself. That's my cat playing with my backdrop, Lavender. So on the back of this box here in Braille and in print, it has some information about Helen Keller. It says, "Alone we can do so little, together we can do so much." And ultimately, I hope that is one of the key messages that you take away at the end of watching this video. I did a TikTok last week and I ended up taking it down because I believe I did not explain it well enough. In thinking about people's reactions to that, was like, how can I describe this or explain this feeling in a way that allows people who will never walk in these shoes to understand it? Because I believe that that is my calling and that is my job here on this earth, and it is the reason I have walked through and faced so many challenges, is to help bridge those gaps in society, because until we bridge those gaps, we will not find equality. And I really believe that as minority communities, as marginalized groups, we need to stop dividing ourselves and comparing ourselves as greater than or less than on the struggle scale. And we need to recognize that what we're all fighting for is the same thing. It's equality. And when we come together and say our struggles are different, but the hurt is the same, we can fight so much better. We will get to the end goal so much quicker. I remember I did a podcast a few years ago with Lily Marston and Jocelyn Davis, two absolute queens. I think it's still on YouTube. I'll link it below if I can find it. And honestly, I was absolutely not myself in that. I was not myself. It's hard for me to watch. Like when I watched it, I was like, I hate myself in this. This is not me. And I was reading through the comments and somebody said that. They're like, she seems really like edgy, like just not herself and like really off. And I really don't like this side of her or this version of her. And I didn't take that comment to offense because I saw that in myself. But what people didn't see is that I showed up 30 minutes late to my job that day. And my job was to record that podcast episode. And I showed up 30 minutes late because 2 Ubers in a row denied me access because of my guide dog. So yeah, I was a little off. I was a little edgy because my rights were denied twice in a row and I was late as a result. The other day when I made that TikTok, I had just gone to a restaurant with my guide dog. And I haven't been to many restaurants since things have started to open up again, so I was really excited to go. And I walk in and I say to them, you know, hi, I'm Molly, I'm blind, I'm here with my guide dog. And the person says, I just need to make sure I can seat service dogs inside. And that is incredibly degrading. And for me, I know that people would be outraged if that statement was made to any other marginalized community. If that statement was about a race, a religion, a sexual orientation, or a gender identity, people would understand immediately that that statement is not okay. Even if it was about another person within the disability community, but not using a service dog. For example, somebody in a wheelchair. If somebody was to say, let me make sure we can seat people in wheelchairs indoors, people would immediately understand that that is incredibly ableist, that that is incredibly degrading, rude, and discriminatory, and hurtful. But because it was said to me about my service dog, people felt that I was comparing a dog to people. And what I think people don't understand is that that discrimination wasn't towards my dog. It was towards me, a disabled person. By the way, after I did speak with the 2 restaurant employees as well as the manager who asked me to prove my disability, which legally I don't have to, and I had to argue and fight for my rights for about 20 minutes. They kindly allowed me to sit inside and then barely served me and were rude every time they came up to me. So a lot of times you'll hear people say things like, after you advocate and fight for your rights and give them the actual law, they'll say things like, we'll make an exception this time. It's not an exception to give somebody their rights. It is not an exception to follow the law. And so yeah, even in that case when they were like, I have to see if we're allowed to seat service dogs inside, and then I fought for 20 minutes and got my right to sit inside, they were rude the whole time and like barely ever came over to check or serve me. So yeah.
That's not good.
No. The reality is, when my dog is in harness, it is not a dog anymore. It is a tool. It is a medical aid. It is my mobility device. The way a wheelchair or a walker is for somebody who has issues walking. That is what my guide dog is to me. And so we need to stop seeing service dogs and thinking of them as a dog. That is why when a dog is in harness or in vest and is working, you can't treat them like a dog. You don't get to feed them human food. You don't get to look at them, talk to them, interact with them, pet them, squeak toys at them, because they're not a dog anymore. In that circumstance, they are not a dog. They are a mobility device. That dog is no longer my pet or my companion. That dog is an extension of my own self. That dog is my eyes in that moment. And so when the dog is being discriminated against, I'm not angry that a dog is being discriminated against. A piece of my being, of myself, of my independence, my capability, my ability to move in space is being discriminated against and not taken seriously. Service dogs need to be respected and taken seriously and seen for what they are. A vital piece of that disabled person's ability to function in society. Because if you take my guide dog away from me and I don't have a cane, I very literally cannot navigate a space. If I am on my own and I don't have a guide dog or a cane, I can't move because it is unsafe for me to do so. So discriminating against a service dog is discriminating against the disabled person with the service dog. And that is how it feels to me. I don't feel that my dog is being discriminated against. I feel that I am being discriminated against because I require my dog. You truly wouldn't believe the circumstances that I found myself in. And it's on me, like I haven't shared these stories. And the reason I haven't is because they're like really shocking and challenging for me to get through. I had a security guard break into my hotel room when I was alone sleeping in New York City to kick me out of the hotel. Mom, can you vouch for that?
Oh yes, that was very shocking.
He broke into my hotel room while I was sleeping alone and started screaming at me to get out of the hotel and that I wasn't allowed to be there. I have had so many circumstances. I went to a bar with my mom and 2 friends and was publicly shamed, demeaned, and very literally screamed at to get out and that I wasn't welcome. I wasn't even allowed to sit on the patio. I just wasn't welcome at the facility, period. And it didn't matter that I said, I am blind. I cannot see. This is my service dog. This is the law. This is my mobility device. I need this. I require this. This is my right. This is a human right. You can be sued. This is illegal. It didn't matter what I said. They yelled at me and would not let me on the property. Can you vouch for that, Maeve?
Absolutely.
Not one person in that bar stood up for me. They just watched. Not one person said, this is wrong. This is discrimination. And I've got to believe that if somebody was being yelled at the top of their lungs by a bartender to get out, and that you're not even allowed to speak to my manager, I don't want you here, for like 8 to 10 minutes because of their gender identity, their race, their religion, or their sexuality, that somebody would stand up and say, that is wrong. That somebody would whip out their phone and film it and it would go viral and society would be in outrage. But because it was a disabled person with a service dog, it seemed like nobody even cared. And my service dog is supposed to be the thing that I am provided, the accommodation that I am given to make my life easier. In many ways, it does. The thing that I'm so incredibly gifted to receive that makes a world of a difference to my life also causes so much pain. It's really difficult. And if you're a service dog user and face frequent discrimination, face extreme circumstances like those, or hardly face it at all, I'm sorry that you go through this. And I'm sorry that it doesn't get taken seriously, because I know that for many of us, it really hurts. And it strips away so much of your humanity. And I don't know how we get past this. I truly feel that it is getting so much worse than better, and I don't know what we do. I worked with the Canadian government to help create legislation to protect real service dog partnerships, real service dog teams, and that very law I helped create was used against me a few weeks ago. And I was left in tears outside a facility on the phone with the government agency and fighting for my rights for over an hour. And guess what? By the time my rights are granted, it's often very uncomfortable to be there, you know? And I really don't know how we get past this. So I guess I'm asking to other service dog users, what do you think we need to do? And to those who are not service dog users, who don't know anybody who is, but has faced discrimination of your own, big or small, can we please just come together and fight for our rights together? And not divide ourselves and compare and create a hierarchy? Because my point is that discrimination is equal. Discrimination is discrimination. No matter who you are, how serious it is, it hurts. And if your human rights are being violated, that's not okay. And it doesn't matter who you are or why it's being done, it's not okay. I don't know, but maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's not how people see it. But yeah, I guess I just wanted to try to share some of my experiences in a little way, and maybe one day I will sit down and tell some of those stories, like the hotel or the bar, kind of line by line, like how it all played out, not just give you the little snapshot moment. And maybe that'll help. Maybe I just need to share more of these stories so people understand what it really is, what it really means, what it's really like. By far, having a guide dog still outweighs, for me personally, having a cane. Because as I've explained in videos like this one, guide dog versus cane, they are incredibly different mobility tools and aids. It really is like comparing a wheelchair and a walker for an ambulatory wheelchair user, or somebody who could choose to use either, but prefers one. They prefer one over the other because they truly are different devices. It's the same with canes and guide dogs. They are different mobility aids. And so even though having a guide dog has caused me to face more discrimination than when I use a cane, I do feel that the benefits it gives me outweigh these negatives. But trust me, these negatives is really hard to cope with sometimes. So yeah, I would love your opinions and your perspectives, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this. And I'm sorry that in that TikTok I didn't like accurately explain or portray what I have to say, but obviously it's taken over 20 minutes for me to do it, and on TikTok you get like a max of 3. But yeah, I just felt that it was time for me to come and sit and share my perspective on this and my opinions, and just ask as communities that we come together instead of divide ourselves. And so that's all. You guys found this video interesting or learned something, or in some way it was thought-provoking for you, and I would love to have some really safe, healthy, constructive, positive conversation in the comments below. Share your experiences if you feel safe and comfortable doing so. Again, whether you've faced discrimination as a service dog user or not, I'd love to hear your perspectives and opinions, and let's have some good conversation. Okay, I love you guys. If you want some more Molly, you can see this guide dog versus cane video over here, or you can click over here to hear about 9 things I've never done because I'm blind. See you next time. Bye.